The Fallout series began in the late 1990s, created by Interplay Productions and their division Black Isle Studios. The very first Fallout was released in 1997, and it quickly established itself as one of the most unique role-playing games of its era. At the time, most RPGs drew inspiration from medieval fantasy worlds, but Fallout dared to imagine something different, a post-apocalyptic America shaped by nuclear war, retrofuturism, and moral choice. It stood out for its mix of gritty atmosphere, dark humor, and open-ended freedom, laying the groundwork for one of gaming's most iconic series. Fallout was originally conceived as a spiritual successor to Wasteland, an older 1988 RPG also created by Interplay. Due to licensing issues, the developers couldn't make a direct sequel, so they instead built a new universe with similar themes. The team leaned heavily into the aesthetics of 1950s Americana, drawing on Cold War anxieties and the era's obsession with nuclear power. The result was a world where the optimism of mid-century America collided with the devastation of atomic war, producing the signature retro-futuristic wasteland aesthetic that defines Fallout to this day. The first Fallout game introduced the Special System, an acronym for Strength, Perception, Endurance, Charisma, Intelligence, Agility, and Luck. This character creation framework became the foundation for all future Fallout games, giving players the freedom to build heroes, villains, or anything in between. It wasn't just about combat, your stats determined how you interacted with the world. A high charisma character could talk their way through situations, while a low intelligence character might only be able to communicate in grunts and broken sentences, producing hilarious dialogue options. This focus on roleplay helped Fallout stand apart from other RPGs of the time. Fallout's story began with Vault 13, one of the many underground shelters created by Vault-Tec. Players took on the role of the Vault Dweller, a survivor tasked with leaving the safety of the vault to find a replacement water chip. What started as a simple survival mission quickly expanded into a sprawling adventure across the wasteland, where choices carried weight and morality wasn't always clear. The game allowed players to decide whether to help settlements, betray allies, or even commit atrocities, and those decisions shaped the outcome of the story. This emphasis on player agency became one of Fallout's most defining traits. One of the most memorable villains introduced in the original Fallout was the Master. A horrifying mutant leader, the Master was once a human named Richard Moreau, who had been mutated by exposure to the Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV. His grotesque body was fused with technology, creating a creature that was both human and machine, surrounded by an army of super mutants. The Master's ultimate goal was to bring all of humanity into unity through forced mutation, believing it was the only way for the species to survive in the post-nuclear world. Players could defeat him through combat, but Fallout's design offered an alternative. With enough skill, you could convince the Master through dialogue that his plan was flawed, causing him to self-destruct. This level of choice and consequence was groundbreaking for its time. The world of Fallout was filled with black comedy and cultural references. Ads and propaganda posters scattered across the game world mimicked real-world 1950s slogans, with cheerful cartoon mascots like Vault Boy smiling in the face of nuclear annihilation. The game balanced bleak survival with satirical humor, creating a tone that was both tragic and absurd. This unique voice set Fallout apart, ensuring that it wasn't just another post-apocalyptic game, but one with a distinct identity that resonated deeply with players. Music also played a crucial role in establishing Fallout's atmosphere. The first game's soundtrack was largely ambient, created by composer Mark Morgan. His haunting, industrial soundscapes gave the wasteland a sense of loneliness and decay, immersing players in a world where civilization had collapsed. While later Fallout games would become famous for their use of cheerful 1950s and 60s tracks like I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire, the original leaned heavily on eerie tones that perfectly captured the desolate mood of the wasteland. Fallout's open-ended design meant that players could stumble upon hidden encounters and secrets that weren't tied to the main story. You might find a crashed UFO, a random gang of raiders, or even a nod to Monty Python's Knights Who Say Ni. These Easter eggs became a hallmark of the series, blending pop culture references with the grim realities of post-apocalyptic survival. It reinforced the idea that Fallout was a living world, one where surprises could lurk around any corner. Despite being critically acclaimed, the original Fallout was almost never made. Development was difficult, with a small team working under tight deadlines and technical limitations. Interplay used the GURPS role-playing system early in development, but a dispute over content caused the licensing deal to fall apart. The team quickly replaced it with the special system, which ended up becoming one of Fallout's most iconic features. In hindsight, what seemed like a setback became a defining strength of the series. When Fallout released in 1997, it received praise for its writing, freedom, and atmosphere. Reviewers noted that it gave players unprecedented control over their characters and stories. Unlike many RPGs that funneled players into specific paths, Fallout encouraged experimentation and rewarded creativity. Its mature themes, from moral ambiguity to the horrors of nuclear war, helped elevate it beyond being just a game. It became a commentary on humanity's future. Though sales were modest compared to bigger franchises, Fallout's influence was immediate and enduring, and it laid the foundation for the wasteland adventures that followed. Just 1 year after the success of the original, Fallout 2 was released in 1998, again developed by Black Isle Studios. While the first Fallout had laid the groundwork, Fallout 2 expanded nearly every aspect of the formula, creating a game that was larger, deeper, and more ambitious. If Fallout was a glimpse into the wasteland, Fallout 2 felt like a full exploration of its possibilities. Players were dropped into a world that was more alive, more chaotic, and filled with even greater opportunities to shape the story. Fallout 2 put players in the role of the Chosen One, a descendant of the Vault Dweller from the first game. The Chosen One came from a tribal village that revered the Vault Dweller as a legendary hero. This connection to the first game gave Fallout 2 a sense of continuity, while also pushing the story forward. The main quest revolved around finding the GECK, the Garden of Eden Creation Kit, a device designed to restore life to the wasteland. This quest, simple at first glance, led to a massive adventure filled with moral dilemmas, faction politics, and encounters that tested every aspect of role-playing. The scale of Fallout 2 was enormous compared to its predecessor. The map was larger, with more towns, cities, and random encounters scattered across it. Places like New Reno, Vault City, and the NCR became iconic locations, each with their own cultures, politics, and quests. New Reno, in particular, stood out for its dark, satirical take on organized crime, filled with casinos, mob bosses, and shady deals. Fallout 2 wasn't afraid to push boundaries, filling its world with mature themes, black comedy, and situations that were controversial even by the standards of late 90s gaming. One of Fallout 2's biggest contributions to the series was the introduction of the New California Republic, or NCR. This faction started as a small settlement, but grew into a major political power, representing order and democracy in the wasteland. The NCR would go on to play a massive role in later Fallout games, especially Fallout New Vegas. By including them in Fallout 2, Black Isle set the stage for a recurring theme in the series: the tension between freedom and control, chaos and stability. Players could ally with the NCR, oppose them, or simply observe as they expanded across the map. Fallout 2 was also packed with Easter eggs and pop culture references, even more so than the first game. Players could stumble upon everything from Star Wars jokes to Monty Python nods, and even an encounter with the Bridgekeeper from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. While some critics felt these references broke immersion, fans embraced them as part of the series' charm. The blend of grim post-apocalyptic survival and absurd humor became a signature of Fallout's identity, reminding players that even in the darkest settings, there's room for laughter. Companions also played a larger role in Fallout 2. While the first game allowed for some followers, Fallout 2 expanded this system, letting players recruit characters like Sulik, Cassidy, and Marcus. Each companion had their own personality, backstory, and combat style. Sulik, for example, was a tribal warrior who spoke in unique slang and carried a sledgehammer, while Cassidy was a grizzled bartender with a tragic past. Marcus was especially notable, a super mutant who had been part of the Master's army in Fallout 1, now seeking redemption as the sheriff of Broken Hills. These companions deepened the role-playing experience, giving players not just allies in combat, but characters to care about. The special system returned, once again defining character builds in creative ways. Fallout 2 leaned even harder into role-playing through stats. For example, playing a low-intelligence character could lead to hilarious dialogue, where your chosen one communicated in grunts or nonsensical phrases. High charisma opened up entirely different quest outcomes, while luck could trigger rare, bizarre encounters. This flexibility gave Fallout 2 immense replay value, as no two playthroughs had to be the same. Fallout 2 also introduced vehicles to the series, most famously the Highwayman. This beat-up old car could be repaired and driven across the wasteland, reducing travel time on the world map. While simple in execution, the car was beloved by fans and became one of the most memorable items in the game. It even had a trunk for storing loot, solving one of the most common frustrations of inventory management in RPGs. The Highwayman was another example of Fallout 2 expanding the scope of what players could do in the wasteland. One of the most shocking moments in Fallout 2 came from the Enclave, the remnants of the pre-war US government. The Enclave served as the game's main antagonists, equipped with advanced technology and a ruthless agenda. Unlike the NCR, which sought to rebuild civilization, the Enclave represented authoritarian control and elitism. They viewed most wastelanders as inferior, unworthy of survival. The player's ultimate confrontation with the Enclave aboard their oil rig base was a dramatic finale, cementing them as one of Fallout's most infamous factions. The Enclave's appearance also gave players their first look at advanced power armor designs, which became an enduring symbol of Fallout's imagery. Despite being beloved by fans, Fallout 2 was not without flaws. The game was notorious for being buggy at launch, with quests sometimes breaking or dialogue looping incorrectly. Its mature humor also courted controversy, with some critics questioning whether certain quests went too far. Yet, for all its rough edges, Fallout 2 was celebrated for its ambition and depth. It pushed the boundaries of what RPGs could be, offering freedom and choice that rivaled any other game of its time. For many fans, Fallout 2 remains the pinnacle of the classic isometric Fallout era. When players look back at Fallout 2, they remember more than just the story of the Chosen One. They remember the sprawling towns filled with colorful characters, the absurd and unexpected random encounters, the companions who became trusted allies, and the feeling that every decision mattered. Fallout 2 wasn't just a sequel, it was a declaration that Fallout had the potential to become one of the greatest RPG franchises ever made. After Fallout 2's release in 1998, fans were eager for the next big chapter in the Wasteland saga. But instead of immediately producing Fallout 3, Interplay experimented with spin-offs that expanded the Fallout name in different directions. These years are often remembered as Fallout's experimental era, where developers tested new ideas, some of which found an audience, while others became cautionary tales. The first of these spin-offs was Fallout Tactics: Brotherhood of Steel, released in 2001. Developed by Microforte and published by Interplay, it shifted away from the open-world, role-playing focus of the main games, and instead emphasized tactical, squad-based combat. Players controlled a squad of Brotherhood of Steel initiates as they ventured through a campaign set in the Midwest of the United States. Unlike the mainline games, dialogue and choice took a back seat, while combat strategies and positioning became the focus. Tactics still used the special system, but with adjustments tailored for squad gameplay. Players could recruit different squad members, each with their own skills and weapons, and missions often required planning and careful positioning. It offered both real-time and turn-based combat modes, letting players choose their preferred style. For some fans, this was a refreshing take that expanded Fallout's mechanics into a more combat-focused experience. However, others felt it lacked the role-playing depth and narrative freedom that defined the core Fallout identity. The story of Fallout Tactics, centered around a splinter group of the Brotherhood of Steel, sent eastward to expand the Order's influence. Along the way, they encountered raiders, mutants, and remnants of pre-war technology. One of the most notable additions was the introduction of the Calculator, an artificial intelligence housed in Vault Zero, which became the game's final antagonist. This story added new layers to the Brotherhood's lore, exploring how their mission to preserve technology could evolve or fracture when transplanted into new regions. Despite its mixed reception, Fallout Tactics remains important because it showed how flexible the Fallout universe could be. It wasn't just about one style of game. The Wasteland setting and special system could adapt to different genres. For fans of tactical strategy games like XCOM, Fallout Tactics offered something unique, even if it wasn't quite the Fallout 3 many players were hoping for. In 2004, Interplay published another spin-off, Fallout: Brotherhood of Steel. Unlike Tactics, this game was an action RPG released on PlayStation 2 and Xbox, and it took Fallout even further from its roots. Developed by Interplay's own studios, it was designed to be a console-friendly experience, with real-time hack-and-slash gameplay more reminiscent of Diablo than a traditional Fallout RPG. Players once again stepped into the boots of Brotherhood recruits, fighting mutants, raiders, and robots in linear levels. Brotherhood of Steel featured recognizable elements of Fallout, like Vault-Tec branding, ghouls, and power armor, but its tone and design felt different from the series' identity. Dialogue was minimal, role-playing was limited, and the game leaned heavily on action. Critics at the time noted that while it was a functional action RPG, it lacked the depth, humor, and freedom that made Fallout special. Fans were particularly disappointed by the drastic shift, and the game is often remembered as one of the weakest entries in the franchise. Still, Brotherhood of Steel wasn't without its quirks. The soundtrack included licensed music from heavy metal bands like Slipknot, a sharp departure from the retro-futuristic tunes the series is known for. The game also experimented with cooperative multiplayer, allowing two players to fight through the wasteland together. These elements gave it some novelty, but they couldn't fully overcome the feeling that this was Fallout in name only. To this day, many longtime fans prefer to treat Brotherhood of Steel as a side experiment rather than part of the series' main legacy. Around this time, Fallout's future looked uncertain. Interplay was struggling financially, and the ambitious plans for Fallout 3, codenamed Van Buren, were never realized under their watch. Black Isle Studios, the creative force behind the first two Fallout games, was eventually shut down, and Van Buren was canceled. Some design documents and tech demos from Van Buren would later leak online, giving fans a tantalizing glimpse of what might have been, a game that would have continued the isometric RPG tradition with a story set in the American Southwest. Even though Van Buren never saw the light of day, its influence lived on. Many of its concepts were later reimagined in Fallout New Vegas, developed years later by Obsidian Entertainment, a studio formed by former Black Isle developers. The connection between Van Buren and New Vegas became a piece of Fallout lore in itself, showing how ideas can survive even after projects are canceled. By the mid-2000s, Interplay's financial struggles forced them to sell off rights to some of their properties. In 2004, Bethesda Softworks, known at the time for their Elder Scrolls series, acquired the rights to develop Fallout 3. This marked a turning point for the franchise. Fans wondered what a first-person, fully 3D Fallout would look like, and there was both excitement and skepticism. Bethesda's purchase meant that Fallout would no longer be a purely isometric RPG. It would be reimagined as something larger, more ambitious, and more accessible to a wider audience. The experimental years of Fallout Tactics and Brotherhood of Steel are often seen as missteps, but they also served as reminders of Fallout's versatility. The wasteland could support tactical strategy, hack-and-slash action, and role-playing all under the same umbrella. While these spin-offs didn't achieve the acclaim of Fallout 1 or 2, they kept the franchise alive during a turbulent period. Without them, Fallout might not have survived long enough to reach Bethesda's hands, where it would be reborn for a new generation. Looking back, this era of Fallout history feels like wandering through the wasteland itself, uncertain, dangerous, and full of strange detours. Fallout Tactics showed how the Brotherhood of Steel could evolve in new directions, while Brotherhood of Steel reminded fans what they valued most about the franchise. Together, they paved the way for the reinvention of Fallout in 3 dimensions, a leap that would define the series for decades to come. When Bethesda Softworks released Fallout 3 in 2008, it marked one of the most dramatic reinventions in video game history. Fallout had started as a niche, isometric role-playing series, beloved by hardcore RPG fans, but largely unknown outside that circle. Bethesda, already famous for the Elder Scrolls 3, Morrowind, and the Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion, took Fallout into the realm of fully 3-dimensional, first-person open-world exploration. This shift was controversial at first, but it ultimately transformed Fallout into a mainstream phenomenon. Set in the ruins of Washington, D.C., Fallout 3 introduced players to the Capitol Wasteland. For the first time, landmarks like the Washington Monument, the Capitol Building, and the National Mall were reimagined as desolate shells in a post-nuclear landscape. The setting created a haunting contrast between America's political heart and the devastation of war. Exploring this world felt both eerie and awe-inspiring, and it gave the Fallout series a new cultural relevance. The player took on the role of the Lone Wanderer, a resident of Vault 101. The game's introduction became iconic. Players grew up within the vault, experiencing their childhood, teenage years, and eventual escape into the outside world. This tutorial wasn't just a lesson in mechanics, it was a narrative device that grounded players in their character's personal journey. The moment when the vault doors slid open and sunlight flooded, the screen became one of the most memorable introductions in modern gaming. Bethesda preserved the special system, but adapted it for a first-person RPG. Skills like lockpick, science, and speech still shaped gameplay, but combat shifted toward real-time shooting. To keep Fallout's strategic flavor, Bethesda introduced VATS, the Vault-Tec Assisted Targeting System. With a button press, time slowed down, and players could target specific enemy body parts, complete with cinematic kill cams. VATS bridged the gap between Fallout's turn-based roots and Bethesda's real-time action, giving players flexibility in how they approached combat. Fallout 3 also leaned heavily on atmosphere and exploration. The wasteland was filled with ruined suburbs, abandoned metro tunnels, and hidden bunkers, each telling their own story. Bethesda's hallmark of environmental storytelling was in full effect. A skeleton clutching a teddy bear in a ruined house, a half-stocked fridge in a deserted diner, or a locked safe buried in rubble. These details created the sense that every location had a history, even if no quest marker pointed you there. For many players, wandering off the beaten path was just as rewarding as completing the main story. The main narrative centered on the lone wanderer's search for their father, James, voiced by actor Liam Neeson. James had left Vault 101 in search of Project Purity, a massive water purification device that could restore clean water to the Capitol Wasteland. This personal quest for family was interwoven with larger themes of survival and rebuilding civilization. The Enclave returned as antagonists, still clinging to pre-war ideals of purity and control, while the Brotherhood of Steel fought to protect humanity's remnants. Players were caught in the middle of these factions, making choices that determined the fate of the wasteland. Choice and consequence remained central to Fallout 3, though with a Bethesda twist. Moral decisions were tracked with the karma system, where good deeds raised your standing as a hero and evil acts branded you a villain. This system was more binary than Fallout 1 or 2's nuanced choices, but it gave players a clear way to roleplay. Some endings even reflected these moral paths, showing the lasting consequences of your choices. Whether you sacrificed yourself for Project Purity, let others die, or even sabotage the entire project, your decisions shaped the Capitol Wasteland's destiny. Fallout 3 also became famous for its use of licensed music. While Mark Morgan's ambient sound defined the original games, Bethesda embraced the cheerful optimism of 1940s and 50s tracks. Songs like I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire by the Ink Spots and Butcher Pete by Roy Brown played over the in-game radio, creating an ironic juxtaposition between cheerful tunes and the devastation around you. Galaxy News Radio, hosted by the charismatic Three Dog, became an essential companion as players roamed the wasteland, filling the silence with music, news, and encouragement. The game was supported with several downloadable content packs that expanded its scope. Operation Anchorage recreated a military simulation of the liberation of Alaska from Chinese forces. The pit sent players to the ruins of Pittsburgh, now a brutal slave-run society. Broken Steel extended the main story beyond its original ending, letting players continue their adventures after the events of Project Purity. Point Lookout offered a creepy swamp filled with mutated locals, and Mothership Zeta took players into outer space aboard an alien spacecraft. These expansions showcased the versatility of Fallout 3, offering everything from grounded survival tales to wild science fiction adventures. Fallout 3's critical and commercial success revitalized the franchise. It won multiple Game of the Year awards and sold millions of copies, bringing Fallout into the mainstream gaming conversation for the first time. For players who had never touched the original isometric RPGs, Fallout 3 became their entry point into the series. For others, it sparked debates about whether Bethesda had stayed true to Fallout's roots or created something entirely new. Regardless of the divide, Fallout 3 cemented Fallout as one of the defining RPG franchises of the modern era. Looking back, Fallout 3 represents a turning point, the moment when Fallout transformed from a cult classic into a cultural icon. It introduced millions of new players to the wasteland, redefined how RPGs could merge exploration, storytelling, and freedom, and set the stage for future entries. For some, the Capital Wasteland remains the definitive Fallout setting, its ruined monuments and haunted streets embodying everything the series is about. In 2010, just 2 years after the success of Fallout 3, Bethesda released Fallout New Vegas. While Bethesda published the game, development was handled by Obsidian Entertainment, a studio formed by former Black Isle Studios developers, many of the same people who had worked on Fallout 1 and Fallout 2. This collaboration brought the series full circle, blending Bethesda's modern open-world approach with the deep role-playing roots of the original games. The result was a title that many fans still consider the best Fallout ever made. Set in the Mojave Desert, New Vegas centered on the city of Las Vegas, miraculously spared from direct nuclear strikes. The Strip stood as a beacon of neon lights and gambling amid the devastation, surrounded by factions vying for control of the region. Players stepped into the role of the courier, who began the game by being shot in the head and left for dead during a delivery gone wrong. Revived by a quirky robot named Victor and a kindly doctor in the town of Goodsprings, the courier set out not only to recover the stolen package, but also to navigate a power struggle that would determine the fate of the Mojave. One of New Vegas's defining features was its emphasis on factions. Unlike Fallout 3, where morality was largely tracked through a karma system, New Vegas allowed players to shape their reputation with different groups. The New California Republic returned, seeking to expand its democratic ideals into the Mojave. Caesar's Legion, a brutal empire inspired by ancient Rome, ruled through fear and slavery. Mr. House, the mysterious ruler of the Strip, used pre-war technology to maintain control. And of course, players could choose an independent path, carving out their own destiny for the Mojave. This faction system gave the game incredible replay value, as siding with one group often locked you out of alliances with others, forcing hard choices with long-term consequences. Companions were another highlight of New Vegas. Characters like Boone, a haunted sniper, Veronica, a Brotherhood of Steel scribe, and Arcade Gannon, a member of the Followers of the Apocalypse, each brought unique skills and perspectives. They weren't just sidekicks for combat, they had personal quests, opinions on the player's actions, and even potential conflicts with each other. For example, traveling with Boone while supporting Caesar's Legion could lead to serious disagreements. This attention to detail made companions feel more like living characters than simple gameplay tools. Obsidian also introduced the companion wheel, a new interface that made managing allies easier. Players could quickly assign commands like attack, stay, or use ranged weapons, streamlining the system and making companions more responsive. These improvements became so beloved that they influenced how later Fallout games approached followers. The Mojave itself was richly detailed, filled with locations that told stories through design and atmosphere. From the decrepit roller coasters of Prim to the irradiated vaults hiding dark experiments, every corner of the map offered something memorable. Vault 11, for instance, shocked players with its haunting tale of forced sacrifices. The Boomers, a faction of reclusive artillery enthusiasts, added eccentricity to the wasteland. Even small side quests often revealed surprisingly deep narratives, making exploration rewarding in ways that went beyond loot or experience points. The game's DLC expanded the Mojave with self-contained stories that tied into a larger narrative arc. Dead Money trapped players in the Sierra Madre Casino, a deadly survival horror scenario filled with poisonous clouds and mute assassins. Honest Hearts took the courier to Zion Canyon, introducing tribal communities and the enigmatic missionary Joshua Graham, also known as the Burned Man. Old World Blues leaned into comedy and absurd science fiction, placing players in a research facility run by deranged robot scientists. Finally, Lonesome Road confronted the courier with Ulysses, another mail carrier who represented a dark mirror of the player's choices. Together, these expansions fleshed out the Mojave and deepened the courier's story in ways rarely seen in open-world RPGs. New mechanics also enriched the experience. Hardcore mode added survival elements like hunger, thirst, and sleep requirements, appealing to players who wanted a greater challenge. Ammunition could be broken down and crafted at reloading benches, adding a layer of resource management. Weapon mods allowed players to customize their arsenal. These systems rewarded careful planning and gave the game a sense of realism without forcing it on players who preferred a lighter experience. The writing of New Vegas was particularly praised. The dialogue often reflected the player's stats, allowing unique responses based on intelligence, speech, or other skills. Obsidian's writers leaned heavily into Fallout's dark humor and moral ambiguity, ensuring that no faction was entirely good or evil. The NCR was democratic but corrupt, the Legion brutal but efficient, and Mr. House visionary yet authoritarian. This moral grayness gave the Mojave a sense of authenticity, where players were constantly weighing imperfect choices rather than following a simple path of good versus evil. While New Vegas was widely acclaimed, it wasn't without flaws. The game launched with significant bugs and technical issues, leading some to criticize its stability compared to Fallout 3. Time constraints during development meant that some planned features and storylines had to be cut. Despite these problems, the core gameplay and writing were so strong that New Vegas quickly earned a devoted fan base. Over time, patches and mods helped fix many of the issues, allowing the brilliance of the design to shine through. Today, Fallout New Vegas is regarded by many as the high point of the series. Its combination of player choice, compelling factions, rich storytelling, and memorable characters created an experience that has stood the test of time. Even years later, fans continue to replay it, mod it, and celebrate its achievements. For many, the Mojave represents the ultimate expression of what Fallout should be, a world where survival, morality, and freedom collide in unforgettable ways. In 2015, Bethesda released Fallout 4, the long-awaited sequel to Fallout 3. By this time, Fallout had become one of the most recognizable franchises in gaming, and expectations were sky high. Bethesda once again reimagined the wasteland, this time setting the story in the Commonwealth, a post-nuclear version of Massachusetts and its surrounding regions, with Boston at its heart. The game introduced new mechanics, a fully voiced protagonist, and an emphasis on settlement building, all while carrying forward the series' legacy of exploration and moral choice. The story of Fallout 4 began with a dramatic pre-war prologue. For the first time in the series, players experienced life before the bombs fell, living in a suburban neighborhood with their spouse and infant son. This brief glimpse of normalcy was shattered when nuclear war erupted, forcing the family into Vault 111. Once inside, the player character was cryogenically frozen, only to awaken 2 centuries later to find their spouse murdered and their child kidnapped. This personal narrative, The Search for Sean, drove the main quest and gave the protagonist a more defined backstory than in previous Fallout titles. One of the most notable changes in Fallout 4 was the introduction of a voiced protagonist. Unlike earlier Fallout games, where dialogue was presented through text and player choice, Fallout 4 gave the sole survivor spoken lines, performed by actors Brian T. Delaney and Courtney Taylor. Dialogue options were streamlined into a 4-choice system mapped to the controller's face buttons. While this gave conversations a faster pace, some fans felt it limited role-playing freedom compared to the more detailed dialogue trees of New Vegas. Still, it marked a bold shift in how Bethesda approached narrative presentation. Settlement building became one of Fallout 4's most defining features. Players could scrap debris and structures in towns across the Commonwealth, using the materials to construct houses, defenses, farms, and crafting stations. Settlers could be recruited to live in these communities, and players had to manage resources like food, water, and security. Some fans spent hundreds of hours perfecting elaborate settlements, turning wasteland ruins into thriving villages or even futuristic fortresses. While not every player embraced the system, it expanded Fallout's sandbox potential and inspired an entire creative sub-community within the game. Companions returned with even more personality and involvement than before. Dogmeat, the faithful canine ally, was once again by the player's side, capable of fetching items and attacking enemies. New characters like Piper, a determined journalist from Diamond City, and Nick Valentine, a wisecracking synth detective with a noir personality, quickly became fan favorites. Each companion had their own affinity system, reacting to the player's choices, and many offered unique quests. Romance options were also introduced, allowing players to form deeper connections with certain companions, further blurring the line between role-playing and storytelling. The Commonwealth itself was filled with new factions that shaped the narrative. The Brotherhood of Steel returned, arriving in massive airships under the command of Elder Maxon. The Institute, a secretive organization hidden beneath the wasteland, drove much of the main story with their controversial use of synthetic humans, or synths. The Railroad, inspired by the Underground Railroad, fought for the freedom of these synths, treating them as sentient beings deserving of rights. And of course, the Minutemen offered players the chance to rebuild the Commonwealth through community defense, choosing which faction to side with defined the ending of the game, ensuring that no two playthroughs had to be exactly the same. The Institute's storyline, in particular, raised philosophical questions. Synths, artificial humans indistinguishable from real people, forced players to consider what it means to be alive. Were synths simply machines, or did they possess true consciousness and freedom? This theme gave Fallout 4 some of its most thought-provoking moments, echoing real-world debates about artificial intelligence and personhood. The moral grayness of these choices tied directly into Fallout's tradition of asking players to reflect on the consequences of their actions. Fallout 4 also expanded crafting and customization. Weapons could be heavily modified with scopes, barrels, stocks, and special attachments, turning simple pistols into sniper rifles or shotguns. Power armor was reimagined as a customizable exosuit that required fusion cores to operate, emphasizing its role as advanced technology rather than just another piece of equipment. These systems gave players more control over their playstyle and encouraged experimentation. The game's DLC further enriched the experience. Far Harbor took players to a fog-covered island off the coast of Maine, introducing a morally complex conflict between synth refugees, the children of Adam cult, and local townsfolk. Its storytelling and atmosphere received particular praise, with many fans comparing it favorably to New Vegas. Nuka World transformed the ruins of a theme park into a raider stronghold, allowing players to embrace the darker side of the wasteland. Other expansions, like Automatron, Vault-Tec Workshop, and Wasteland Workshop, added new crafting systems, robot companions, and expanded settlement features. Together, these expansions showcased Fallout 4's flexibility, offering everything from serious narrative arcs to lighthearted experimentation. Visually, Fallout 4 made significant strides over its predecessors, though some critics noted that its graphics still lagged behind other contemporary games. Where it excelled was in environmental design. The Commonwealth was filled with detail, from the baseball-themed city of Diamond City to the eerie ruins of Quincy. The color palette was also brighter than Fallout 3's desaturated tones, reflecting Bethesda's attempt to bring more variety and life into the wasteland. Reception of Fallout 4 was largely positive, though divided on certain elements. Critics praised the world design, crafting systems, and exploration, but some longtime fans lamented the simplified dialogue and the shift toward action. Despite the debates, the game sold millions of copies and cemented Fallout's place as one of the biggest franchises of its generation. For many, Fallout 4 became a game they could sink hundreds of hours into, whether through questing, settlement building, or simply wandering the Commonwealth in search of hidden stories. Ultimately, Fallout 4 represented another evolution of the series. It balanced narrative with sandbox freedom, introduced systems that encouraged creativity, and carried forward the themes of survival, morality, and rebuilding that have always defined Fallout. The Commonwealth may not have pleased everyone, but it gave the franchise new life and ensured that the wasteland remained a place where players could lose themselves for years to come. In 2018, Bethesda released Fallout 76, the most ambitious and controversial entry in the series to date. Unlike previous games, which were primarily single-player adventures, Fallout 76 was designed as an always-online multiplayer experience set in a shared wasteland. It was marketed as a way for players to explore, survive, and rebuild together, but its launch was plagued with technical problems, missing features, and design decisions that clashed with what many fans loved about Fallout. What followed was one of the most infamous launches in modern gaming, but also a story of how persistence, updates, and community support slowly turned things around. The setting of Fallout 76 took players to Appalachia, a post-nuclear version of West Virginia. Unlike previous Fallout games that took place centuries after the bombs fell, Fallout 76 was set just 25 years after the Great War, making it the earliest point in the timeline. Players assumed the role of a Vault 76 resident, part of one of the very first vaults to open. The goal was to step out into a largely untouched wasteland and begin the process of rebuilding civilization. This premise gave the game a unique angle, a fresher, less devastated world filled with new creatures, myths, and mysteries. At launch, however, one of the biggest criticisms was the absence of human non-player characters. Instead, all quests and storylines were delivered through holotapes, terminals, and robots. Bethesda's intention was to emphasize that players themselves were the first humans to return to the wasteland, but many fans felt this made the world feel empty and lifeless. Fallout had always been defined by memorable characters, branching dialogue, and moral choice, and the lack of NPCs left a void in the storytelling experience. Technical issues further soured the launch. Players encountered countless bugs, server disconnects, graphical glitches, and performance problems. Some experienced enemies that wouldn't die, quest triggers that failed to activate, or entire areas that refused to load properly. The game's engine, already criticized in Fallout 4, struggled even more in an online environment. These issues became the subject of ridicule across social media, fueling a narrative that Fallout 76 was unfinished and rushed to market. Controversies also surrounded its business practices. The Fallout 76 Collector's Edition promised a canvas duffel bag, but shipped with a cheaper nylon version, sparking outrage. Later, Bethesda attempted to correct this, but the damage to goodwill was already done. Another uproar came from the introduction of Fallout Oneist, a premium subscription service that offered private servers, unlimited crafting storage, and exclusive cosmetics. Many fans saw this as an attempt to monetize basic features that should have been free, especially in a game already struggling with its reputation. Despite its disastrous start, Bethesda committed to improving Fallout 76 through consistent updates. The most significant of these came in 2020 with the Wastelanders expansion, which finally added human NPCs, branching dialogue, and new factions like the Settlers and the Raiders. This update dramatically changed the tone of the game, making Appalachia feel alive in a way it hadn't at launch. Suddenly, players could have conversations, make choices, and experience stories that felt more in line with Fallout's heritage. Wastelanders was widely praised and marked a turning point in the game's reception. Other expansions and updates continued to build on this foundation. Steel Dawn and Steel Rain expanded the Brotherhood of Steel storyline, while seasonal events like Fastnacht Parade and Meat Week brought the community together for quirky, repeatable celebrations. Bethesda also introduced a season system with scoreboards that allowed players to unlock rewards over time. Each update chipped away at the game's rough reputation, slowly turning it into a more polished and enjoyable experience. The map of Appalachia itself was one of the game's strengths, even at launch. It was massive and diverse, featuring real-world locations reimagined in Fallout style. The Mothman, a local West Virginia legend, became one of the game's most iconic creatures, with events dedicated to its lore. Cranberry Bog, the Mire, and the Savage Divide all offered distinct atmospheres, from eerie forests to irradiated swamps. Over time, Appalachia's richness helped win players back, as it was clear that Bethesda had invested in creating a detailed world even if the systems around it faltered. Community creativity also kept the game alive. Players embraced the camp system, which allowed them to build bases anywhere in the world. Settlements became showcases of imagination, ranging from cozy cabins to elaborate mansions and even interactive amusement parks. Bethesda leaned into this by hosting camp showcases and highlighting the most impressive builds. Just like Fallout 4's settlement system, this feature created a subculture within the community, giving players reasons to log in even outside of quests. Player-driven stories emerged as some of the most memorable aspects of Fallout 76. Because of its online nature, Appalachia became a stage for unique interactions, spontaneous alliances, betrayals in PvP zones, or large-scale roleplay events. Some players styled themselves as traders, others as raiders, and some as protectors of new players wandering out of Vault 76. Even in a game criticized for its flaws, these emergent stories demonstrated the resilience of the Fallout community. Today, Fallout 76 stands as a very different game than it was at launch. While it may never completely escape the shadow of its rocky debut, consistent updates have transformed it into a functional, sometimes even beloved, entry in the franchise. New content continues to be added, keeping Appalachia relevant and ensuring that the experiment of a multiplayer Fallout wasn't a total failure. For players who return now, the game offers a blend of survival, roleplay, and exploration that feels far richer than in 2018. The story of Fallout 76 is a reminder of how fragile and resilient games can be. At its worst, it symbolized broken promises and technical chaos. But through persistence, updates, and the passion of its community, it slowly found its footing. Like the survivors of Vault 76, stepping into an unforgiving wasteland, the game itself had to rebuild piece by piece, and in that sense, perhaps no Fallout entry embodies the spirit of starting over more than Fallout 76. Every great series has its symbols, and Fallout is no different. Over the decades, a handful of mascots, catchphrases, and fictional products have come to define the franchise, transcending the games themselves to become part of pop culture. Even people who have never played Fallout often recognize Vault Boy's cheerful thumbs up or the ironic opening line, "War. War never changes." These elements are more than just branding, they are the heart of Fallout's personality, equal parts grim and tongue-in-cheek. Vault Boy is perhaps the most recognizable face of Fallout. This cheerful cartoon mascot appears on perks, advertisements, and loading screens throughout the series. His simple smile and exaggerated gestures reflect Fallout's satirical take on mid-20th century optimism. Vault Boy was designed to resemble the corporate mascots of the 1950s, the kind that promised safety and progress while hiding darker truths. Over time, he evolved into more than just a perk illustration. He became the unofficial face of the series, representing the absurd cheerfulness of a world preparing for nuclear annihilation. One of the most enduring myths about Vault Boy is the thumbs up pose. Some players believed he was actually measuring the distance of a nuclear blast, holding his thumb up to see if the mushroom cloud was larger than it. If the cloud covered his thumb, he was too close to survive. While this idea became a popular fan theory and meme, Bethesda has clarified that Vault Boy was simply giving a generic thumbs up, not demonstrating a survival technique. Still, the myth lingers because it perfectly captures Fallout's blend of humor, survival, and grim reality. Nuka-Cola is another symbol inseparable from Fallout. Introduced as the pre-war soft drink of choice, it is found in vending machines, fridges, and abandoned ruins throughout the wasteland. Its colorful bottles and nostalgic advertising reflect Fallout's satire of American consumer culture. Over the years, variations like Nuka-Cola, Quantum, Victory, and Cherry have been introduced, expanding the fictional brand into a universe of flavors. Quantum, with its glowing blue bottle, has become especially iconic, spawning real-world promotional drinks and even collector's editions sold at gaming conventions. Nuka-Cola has become such a beloved piece of Fallout lore that some fans treat it as if it were a real-world product. Dogmeat, the loyal canine companion, is another enduring symbol. He first appeared in the original Fallout, inspired by Mad Max 2, where the protagonist roams the wasteland with a dog at his side. Every major Fallout game since has included a version of Dogmeat, always faithful, brave, and ready to fight by the player's side. In Fallout 4, Dogmeat was given expanded abilities, able to fetch weapons, sniff out enemies, and even locate hidden loot. Players often form emotional bonds with him, treating him not just as a companion but as family. For many, Dogmeat represents the heart of Fallout loyalty, hope, and companionship in a world of ruin. Then there is the iconic line, "War. War never changes." This phrase has opened nearly every Fallout game, becoming as much a part of the series as Vault Boy or Nuka-Cola. It first appeared in the original Fallout in 1997, delivered in a gravelly voiceover. The line serves as a reminder that, despite the futuristic technology and retro-futurist setting, human conflict remains eternal. Bethesda continued the tradition in Fallout 3, Fallout 4, and Fallout 76, often narrated by actor Ron Perlman. The phrase resonates because it captures Fallout's core message. No matter how advanced society becomes, war and its consequences are always the same. The Pip-Boy is another essential icon. This wrist-mounted computer is given to nearly every protagonist in the series, serving as both an in-game interface and a piece of lore. Designed by Vault-Tec, the Pip-Boy displays the player's stats, inventory, maps, and radio stations. Its clunky, old-fashioned design reinforces Fallout's retro-futurist aesthetic, as if the future imagined by the 1950s never moved beyond knobs and green screens. Over the years, real-world replicas have been released as collector's items, with fans proudly wearing them at conventions or displaying them on shelves. The Pip-Boy is more than just a gameplay mechanic. It is the player's constant link to the world of Fallout. Other fictional brands have also become fan favorites. Robco, the company behind the Pip-Boy and Protectron robots, represents the technological optimism and hubris of pre-war America. Vault-Tec itself, with its promise of safety in underground vaults, is one of the most sinister presences in the series, hiding dark experiments under cheerful advertising. Even simple consumables like Sugar Bomb cereal or Dandy Boy apples carry cultural weight, turning mundane items into lasting symbols of Fallout's satirical critique of consumerism. Fallout's humor often shines through these mascots and brands. Ads for Nuka-Cola promise happiness while the world outside crumbles. Vault-Tec posters show smiling families oblivious to the experiments awaiting them underground. Vault Boy cheerfully demonstrates perks like bloody mess where enemies explode into gore. This contrast between cheerful imagery and grim reality is central to Fallout's identity, reminding players that the wasteland isn't just tragic, it's absurd. The community has embraced these icons far beyond the games themselves. Fan art, cosplay, and merchandise have turned Vault Boy, Nuka-Cola, and the Pip-Boy into cultural touchstones. Some players even collect every in-game Nuka-Cola variant or wear only Vault-Tec gear as a personal challenge. The popularity of these symbols demonstrates how deeply Fallout resonates, not just as a game, but as a shared cultural world. Together, Vault Boy, Nuka-Cola, Dogmeat, and the timeless phrase, war never changes, form the emotional core of Fallout. They are reminders of the series' unique ability to balance satire, tragedy, and charm. For longtime fans, seeing Vault Boy's grin or hearing a familiar radio jingle instantly brings them back to the wasteland. And for newcomers, these icons serve as the perfect introduction to a universe where the end of the world is both terrifying and strangely endearing. From its very beginning, Fallout has been defined as much by its sound as by its visuals. Music is what makes the wasteland feel alive, eerie, or even ironically cheerful. Whether it's Mark Morgan's haunting ambient score from the original games, or the cheerful crackle of 1940s swing music blaring from an in-game radio, the soundtrack of Fallout is inseparable from its identity. It is part atmosphere, part satire, and part nostalgia, carrying players through their journeys across irradiated ruins. The first two Fallout games set the tone with atmospheric soundscapes composed by Mark Morgan. His work didn't rely on melody in the traditional sense. Instead, it created long, droning notes, industrial echoes, and unsettling tones that perfectly captured the emptiness of the wasteland. Tracks like Acolytes of the New God and City of the Dead made every step feel ominous, as if the world itself was haunted. These soundtracks were minimalist but unforgettable, immersing players in the hopelessness and decay of post-nuclear America. When Bethesda took over the series with Fallout 3, the sound design shifted dramatically, blending Morgan's legacy of ambient tones with diegetic radio station. For the first time, players could tune into Galaxy News Radio and listen to upbeat songs from the 1940s and 50s. Tracks like I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire by the Ink Spots and Butcher Pete by Roy Brown became instantly iconic, their cheerful rhythms clashing with the desolation of the capital wasteland. This contrast to optimism and ruin side by side became one of Fallout's trademarks under Bethesda. Galaxy News Radio wasn't just about music. It was hosted by the charismatic Three Dog, voiced by Eric Todd Dellums. His commentary tied the world together, reacting to the player's actions, reporting on quests, and adding personality to the wasteland. Three Dog became a beloved character, and his voice defined Fallout 3's atmosphere as much as the ruined monuments did. Hearing him announce your deeds on the radio made the world feel responsive and alive, and many fans still consider him one of the greatest radio hosts in gaming history. Fallout New Vegas expanded the idea with multiple radio stations. Radio New Vegas, hosted by Mr. New Vegas and voiced by the smooth tones of Wayne Newton, gave the Mojave its own distinct sound. The playlist leaned heavily into country, western, and swing tracks, perfectly fitting the desert setting. Meanwhile, Mojave Music Radio offered instrumental classics, giving players variety depending on their mood. These stations helped define the Mojave's character and once again proved how music could set the tone for an entire region. Fallout 4 continued the tradition with Diamond City Radio at the heart of the Commonwealth. Hosted by Travis Miles, an awkward and nervous DJ, the station reflected Fallout's quirky humor. Over the course of a quest line, players could actually boost Travis's confidence, transforming him from a bumbling host into a smooth-talking radio star. The playlist included timeless tracks like Atom Bomb Baby and It's All Over But the Crying, reinforcing the retro-futuristic feel. This combination of music, character development, and interactivity made Diamond City Radio one of the most memorable features of Fallout 4. Fallout 76 gave Appalachia its own musical identity through Appalachia Radio, filled with bluegrass, folk, and country songs that celebrated West Virginia culture. Tracks like Take Me Home, Country Roads became unofficial anthems for the game, perfectly aligning with its setting. The music emphasized that Appalachia was a place with its own traditions and soul, even in the face of nuclear devastation. For many players, these songs made the world feel alive in ways that dialogue alone could not achieve. In addition to radio music, Fallout games have always maintained strong ambient scores to complement exploration. In Fallout 3, Inan Zur composed a soundtrack filled with sweeping orchestral tones and subtle echoes, evoking both wonder and dread. He returned for Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, and Fallout 76, ensuring continuity across Bethesda's entries. Zur's compositions balance tension with hope, blending somber strings with triumphant brass to reflect the dual nature of Fallout's world, broken but not beyond repair. Beyond the official soundtracks, Fallout's music has left a lasting cultural footprint. I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire has become synonymous with Fallout, often used in fan projects and trailers. Songs like Big Iron by Marty Robbins, featured in Fallout New Vegas, saw a resurgence in popularity thanks to the game, even becoming viral decades after their original release. The Fallout community has also embraced the music through covers, remixes, and live performances, proving how powerful these soundtracks are outside of the games themselves. The contrast between grim, wasteland survival and cheerful retro music perfectly embodies Fallout's personality. A firefight against super mutants might be underscored by a cheerful swing tune about romance. Exploring a ruined town might be accompanied by the comforting crackle of an old-time radio. This blending of tones creates a world that feels tragic, ironic, and oddly cozy all at once. Without its unique soundtrack, Fallout would lose much of its charm and cultural identity. Music in Fallout isn't just background noise, it is part of the storytelling. It reminds players that even in a world devastated by nuclear fire, the echoes of the past endure. Whether through Mark Morgan's haunting ambient tracks or the warm crackle of a country ballad on an in-game radio, the music of Fallout turns ruins into memories and wastelands into worlds filled with life. Few elements of Fallout are as iconic or unsettling as the vaults. On the surface, they were marketed as safe havens, underground shelters designed to protect the American people from nuclear annihilation. In the cheerful pre-war ads, families smiled as they descended into the safety of Vault-Tech's state-of-the-art facilities. But the truth, revealed gradually across the series, is far darker. The vast majority of vaults were not built to save lives at all. Instead, they were laboratories for cruel experiments designed to test social engineering, human endurance, and the effects of isolation. Over time, players discovered that the vaults were less about survival and more about control. Vault 13, introduced in the original Fallout, became the template for this duality. To its residents, it was a safe home beneath the earth, but in reality, it was an experiment in prolonged isolation designed to study how humans would adapt to centuries underground. When the Vault Dweller was forced to leave in search of a replacement water chip, it revealed how fragile that safety really was. This first vault set the stage for players to question Vault-Tec's motives, and each new game added layers to the mystery. Vault 111 in Fallout 4 took the horror even further. Its experiment was cryogenic suspension. Families entered believing they would be protected, only to be frozen against their will. Decades later, the sole survivor awoke to discover their spouse murdered and their child kidnapped, all part of Vault-Tec's hidden plans. This chilling betrayal captured the essence of Fallout's vaults, promises of security masking acts of cruelty. It reminded players that in Fallout's world, institutions that claimed to safeguard humanity often exploited it instead. Fallout New Vegas introduced Vault 11, one of the most infamous vault stories in the series. Its experiment forced residents to sacrifice one person each year in order to supposedly keep the vault operational. Over time, the population tore itself apart through paranoia and violence. When players eventually discovered that the sacrifices were never necessary, the experiment was actually a morality test. The result was devastating. Vault 11 exemplified the series' ability to weave horror and tragedy into its lore, leaving players shaken long after they left its halls. Some vaults leaned into bizarre social experiments. Vault 12, located in Bakersfield, was designed to fail. Its door was engineered to malfunction, ensuring radiation seeped in. The survivors mutated into ghouls, creating the settlement of Necropolis. Vault 22 in Fallout New Vegas experimented with agricultural plants, only to unleash aggressive, spore-based monsters. Vault 106 pumped psychoactive drugs into the air, driving its inhabitants insane. These vaults highlighted how Fallout's storytelling often turned seemingly ordinary shelters into nightmarish places, each one a dark parable about trust, authority, and survival. Not all vaults ended in tragedy. A few were functional, though rare. Vault 8 successfully opened as planned and became Vault City in Fallout 2, a structured but authoritarian community. Vault 101 in Fallout 3, while oppressive under its overseer, survived long enough to raise the lone wanderer before their escape. These exceptions made the sinister vaults even more shocking, since players never knew whether a vault they stumbled upon would be a sanctuary or a tomb. Vault-Tec itself became one of Fallout's most sinister villains. On the surface, it was a corporate giant, selling the dream of safety and security to the American public. But behind closed doors, it partnered with the US government in experiments that often stripped away humanity in the name of science and control. Vault-Tec posters and advertisements litter the wasteland, their cheerful slogans contrasting with the horrors players uncovered inside the vaults. This satirical commentary on corporate greed and government overreach became a central theme of the series. Fallout 76 explored Vault-Tec's manipulations in Appalachia, where Vault 76 was one of the rare control vaults with no experiments. Its residents were intended to be among the first to repopulate the surface, serving as a control group against the chaos of other vaults. Yet even this vault couldn't escape the shadow of Vault-Tec's hidden agenda. Notes, terminals, and holotapes revealed how the company's plans extended far beyond simple survival. Vault Tech saw humanity itself as raw material to be tested, twisted, and reshaped for its own ends. The design of the vaults reinforced this sinister undertone with their numbered jumpsuits, sterile corridors, and retro-futuristic furniture. They looked comfortable at first glance, but as players explored deeper, the cheerful posters, malfunctioning machinery, and abandoned skeletons told another story. Each vault became a microcosm of Fallout's themes, the collision of utopian promises with dystopian realities. What makes the vault so powerful is how they embody Fallout's central tension. They are places of refuge that turn into prisons. They represent the hope of survival, twisted into cruelty, and every vault tells its own story, from tragic sacrifices to bizarre social experiments, adding depth to the wasteland as a whole. Vaults remind players that in Fallout, safety is never guaranteed, and trust in authority often leads to betrayal. Over the years, vaults have become one of Fallout's defining features, instantly recognizable to fans and outsiders alike. The iconic blue and yellow jumpsuits, the heavy vault doors rolling open, and the haunting stories within all carry the series' identity. They aren't just bunkers, they are symbols of humanity's fear, hubris, and resilience. Every time a player steps into a new vault, there is a mix of dread and curiosity. Will this be a sanctuary, or will it reveal another cruel experiment? That uncertainty is what makes the vaults unforgettable. The Fallout universe is defined not just by its wastelands and vaults, but by the factions that struggle for power within them. From militaristic orders to ideological republics, every group represents a vision of what humanity should become after the bombs fell. These factions are more than just quest givers or enemies. They are philosophical statements asking players to consider what survival, governance, and morality look like in a broken world. Perhaps the most recognizable faction is the Brotherhood of Steel. Introduced in the very first Fallout, the Brotherhood began as remnants of the U.S. military, who discovered and hoarded advanced technology. Clad in power armor, they became an almost religious order dedicated to preserving pre-war technology, often at the expense of outsiders. Over the series, the Brotherhood's role has shifted, sometimes portrayed as noble defenders, other times as isolationist zealots, unwilling to share their knowledge. In Fallout 3, Elder Lyons reinterpreted the Brotherhood as protectors of the people, while his successors in Fallout 4 reverted to a stricter, more authoritarian vision. This duality, noble knights versus technocratic hoarders, has made them one of Fallout's most complex and enduring factions. The Enclave, on the other hand, represents the dark shadow of America's pre-war government. First appearing in Fallout 2, the Enclave was composed of officials and military personnel who survived the Great War in isolated bunkers and oil rigs. They saw themselves as the rightful rulers of the United States, committed to restoring order, but only for those they deemed pure. Their vision excluded mutants, ghouls, and most wastelanders, whom they saw as inferior. The Enclave's advanced technology, from vertibirds to their fearsome advanced power armor, made them formidable enemies. Their ruthlessness highlighted Fallout's critique of authoritarianism and elitism, portraying them as villains who confused control with civilization. The New California Republic, or NCR, introduced in Fallout 2, offered a different perspective. Emerging from Shady Sands, a small community founded by survivors, The NCR grew into a democratic republic seeking to rebuild society on the principles of law and order. At first, they embodied hope, a functioning government trying to bring stability to chaos. But by the time of Fallout New Vegas, the NCR had become bloated and corrupt, overextended in their expansion, and struggling to maintain control. This evolution showed the dangers of unchecked growth, turning the NCR into a faction that was both admirable and flawed. Players had to decide whether to support their vision of democracy or reject it as another form of domination. Caesar's Legion, also introduced in Fallout New Vegas, was one of the most controversial factions in the series. Founded by Edward Sallow, who renamed himself Caesar, the Legion was a brutal empire modeled on ancient Rome, built on conquest, slavery, and fear. The Legion justified its cruelty as necessary for creating order in the wasteland. While their methods were horrifying, their efficiency and discipline made them a legitimate rival to the NCR. Fallout New Vegas forced players to grapple with the uncomfortable question: was stability through fear better than the chaos of freedom? Few factions in Fallout generated as much debate, making Caesar's Legion both infamous and unforgettable. The Institute, revealed in Fallout 4, offered yet another vision of humanity's future. Hidden beneath the ruins of the Commonwealth, the Institute was a secretive organization of scientists who survived the war and continued their research in isolation. Their greatest creation was the synth artificial humans, indistinguishable from real ones. The Institute saw themselves as shepherds of progress, but to many in the wasteland, they were kidnappers and tyrants, replacing people with synth doubles and wielding power from the shadows. The debate over synths, whether they were machines or sentient beings deserving of rights, became central to Fallout 4's narrative, showcasing the moral dilemmas that define the series. Other factions add color and depth to the wasteland. The followers of the Apocalypse, introduced in Fallout 1, represent idealism and charity. They dedicate themselves to education and healing, often working with limited resources, but driven by hope for a better future. The Great Khans, a raider gang with roots stretching back to Fallout 1, embody the violent, nomadic side of the wasteland, while groups like the Boomers isolationists obsessed with heavy artillery add eccentricity and humor. Each faction, no matter how small, represents a philosophy of survival, from cooperation to exploitation. Fallout 76 expanded the faction tapestry with groups like the Responders, volunteers who banded together to help survivors in Appalachia. Unlike the Authoritarian Brotherhood or the Ruthless Enclave, the Responders symbolized community and compassion. Even though they were ultimately wiped out by the Scorched Plague, their legacy lived on through terminals, holotapes, and quests, reminding players that even in the bleakest settings, people still try to help one another. Later expansions reintroduced the Raiders and Settlers, giving Appalachia the same factional conflicts that define other Fallout titles. What makes Fallout's factions so compelling is the moral ambiguity they present. The Brotherhood's commitment to technology preservation can seem noble until they refuse to share it. The NCR's democracy is inspiring until its corruption shows through. Caesar's Legion is monstrous, yet effective at imposing order. The Institute's genius could advance humanity or doom it through hubris. Every faction forces players to weigh values against costs, and no choice is ever entirely right or wrong. These groups also reflect real-world themes. They mirror debates about authoritarianism versus freedom, tradition versus progress, and the role of technology in society. Fallout uses its factions as allegories, encouraging players to think about the kind of world they would want to live in after catastrophe. Would you cling to democracy even if it falters? Would you sacrifice freedom for stability? Would you trust scientists to lead humanity or fear their detachment? These are the questions that make Fallout more than just a game. They make it a commentary on civilization itself. In the end, factions give Fallout its richness. They ensure that every wasteland feels alive, shaped by competing visions of the future. Players don't just wander ruins, they step into ongoing political struggles, where their choices tip the balance. Whether standing alongside the Brotherhood, overthrowing the Legion, joining the Institute, or carving an independent path, players shape the destiny of the wasteland through the factions they choose. That is what makes Fallout's world feel so alive. It is not just a wasteland, but a battlefield of ideas. One of the joys of Fallout has always been its arsenal. From rusty pipe pistols to futuristic plasma rifles, the series is filled with weapons and technology that reflect its retro-futurist aesthetic. Unlike other post-apocalyptic settings that stick to makeshift gear, Fallout embraces both the crude and the advanced, reminding players that this is a world where scavenged baseball bats coexist with laser cannons. The mix creates a playground where technology is both a blessing and a curse, capable of rebuilding society or tearing it apart. Power armor stands as Fallout's most iconic piece of technology. First appearing in the original game as T-51 armor, it was presented as the pinnacle of pre-war military engineering, a mechanized suit that turned ordinary soldiers into walking tanks. Over the years, new models appeared, from the Brotherhood's hulking T-45 suits to the Enclave's sleek, advanced power armor. In Fallout 4, power armor was reimagined as a fully customizable exosuit that required fusion cores to operate, emphasizing its role as rare, resource-hungry technology rather than just another piece of clothing. Wearing power armor always feels like stepping into legend, embodying the might of a civilization that destroyed itself. Energy weapons are another Fallout staple. Plasma rifles, laser pistols, and Gatling lasers have been part of the series since its earliest days, reflecting the Tomorrowland vision of science fiction imagined in the 1950s. These weapons don't just shoot bullets, they disintegrate enemies into ash piles or melt them into glowing goo. Their exaggerated effects underline Fallout's mix of campy sci-fi and brutal combat. While ammunition for these weapons is often rare, the satisfaction of wielding them makes the hunt worthwhile. On the other end of the spectrum are the improvised weapons of the wasteland. Rusted revolvers, nail boards, and pipe rifles remind players that most survivors make do with whatever they can find. Fallout 4 leaned heavily into this theme, with its wide range of pipe weapons cobbled together from scrap metal, wood, and plumbing supplies. These weapons may be weak compared to high-tech arms, but they reflect the ingenuity and desperation of wasteland life. Every rusty gun tells a story, a reminder that survival often depends on creativity as much as firepower. The Fat Man, Fallout's handheld nuclear catapult, has become infamous as one of gaming's most outrageous weapons. First appearing in Fallout 3, it allows players to launch mini-nukes at enemies, obliterating everything in the blast radius. While wildly impractical, the Fat Man embodies Fallout's dark humor, the idea of turning nuclear devastation into a portable toy for wasteland combat. It quickly became a fan favorite, not only for its destructive power, but also for the absurdity of watching raiders vanish in a mushroom cloud. Unique weapons add personality to the wasteland. Fallout 3 featured the experimental Mirv, a modified Fat Man that launched multiple mini-nukes at once, turning entire battlefields into craters. Fallout New Vegas introduced quirky weapons like Euclid's Sea Finder, which could call down an orbital laser strike. Fallout 4 expanded the crafting system to let players customize weapons with legendary effects, creating guns that could freeze enemies, set them on fire, or explode them into bloody chunks. These unique weapons encourage exploration, rewarding players who search every vault, cave, or hidden bunker with treasures unlike anything else in the game. Melee weapons are just as iconic. From the humble baseball bat to the electrified super sledge, Fallout ensures that close combat is always an option. Chainsaws, shish kebabs, essentially flaming swords, built from motorcycle parts, and even rolling pins can be used in the wasteland. In Fallout New Vegas, the chance to wield a bumper sword made from a car fender captured the series' love of absurd creativity. These weapons reflect the wasteland's culture of improvisation, where anything can become a tool of survival. Robotics also play a crucial role in Fallout's technological identity. Pre-war companies like Robco filled the world with Protectrons, Mr. Handy units, and sentry bots. Some of these robots survived the war, still faithfully performing their duties centuries later, often in ways that no longer make sense. A Mr. Handy might continue trying to clean a house long after its owners are gone, while a Protectron patrols a ruined store. In Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, players can even build and customize their own robots, turning these relics of the old world into powerful allies. Robots embody Fallout's retrofuturism perfectly, optimistic designs that became tragic reminders of a lost civilization. Technology in Fallout isn't always destructive. The Pip-Boy, issued to Vault Dwellers, is one of the series' most beloved gadgets. It may look clunky with its knobs and green screen, but it serves as the player's lifeline, tracking health, quests, and maps, while also providing access to radio stations. Its persistence across the series reinforces Fallout's continuity, reminding players that even as settings and characters change, the Pip-Boy remains their constant companion. In many ways, the Pip-Boy is as iconic as Vault Boy himself, a symbol of both the promise and limits of technology. What makes Fallout's technology so memorable is the contrast it creates. For every high-tech laser rifle, there is a makeshift pistol. For every mighty power armor suit, there are rags and pipe wrenches. The world is built on these juxtapositions, showing both the greatness of pre-war civilization and the fragility of life after its fall. Fallout's arsenal and gadgets aren't just tools for gameplay. They are storytelling devices, symbols of a world where progress and destruction walk hand in hand. One of the reasons Fallout's world feels so alive is its creatures. Beyond raiders, robots, and factions, the wasteland teems with mutated wildlife, terrifying predators, and tragic human survivors twisted by radiation. These creatures don't just serve as enemies, they embody the consequences of nuclear war, showing how radiation and experimentation reshaped life on Earth into strange and horrifying forms. From the iconic Deathclaw to the tragic Ghoul, every creature tells a story of survival, mutation, or corruption. Super mutants are perhaps the most famous of Fallout's monstrous creations. First introduced in the original Fallout, they were created when humans were exposed to the Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV. Originally designed by the US government As a way to create stronger soldiers, the virus transformed its subjects into hulking, nearly immortal beings. While super mutants are incredibly strong and resistant to damage, the process robs them of their humanity. In some cases, intelligence is preserved, creating leaders like Marcus in Fallout 2 and Fallout New Vegas, but in many others, they become violent and mindless. The Master's army in Fallout 1 highlighted how the line between salvation and monstrosity was razor thin. Deathclaws are another symbol of the wasteland's dangers. These towering reptilian predators were originally created before the war as genetic experiments meant to replace human soldiers in combat. After the bombs fell, they spread across the wasteland, evolving into apex predators feared by all. Deathclaws are known for their speed, strength, and ability to shred even heavily armored opponents in seconds. Encounters with them are often terrifying, and in early Fallout games, stumbling into a Deathclaw nest unprepared was practically a death sentence. Over time, variations like the intelligent Deathclaws in Fallout 2 and the mutated glowing variants in Fallout 4 kept them fresh and terrifying. Ghouls are among the most tragic figures in Fallout. They are humans who survived the Great War but were heavily irradiated, their bodies deteriorating into zombie-like forms. Many ghouls retain their minds, living for centuries and often serving as wise elders who remember the pre-war world. Characters like Harold, the mutant ghoul hybrid with a tree growing from his head, or Hancock, the ghoul mayor of Goodneighbor in Fallout 4, show the humanity that lingers beneath their grotesque appearances. But others lose their sanity entirely, becoming feral ghouls that attack on sight. This duality, human yet monstrous, victim yet survivor, makes ghouls some of the most compelling beings in Fallout. Mirelurks, on the other hand, are pure nightmare fuel. Resembling mutated crustaceans, these creatures often lurk near water and ambush unsuspecting survivors. Fallout 3 introduced them in the Capital Wasteland's rivers, while Fallout 4 expanded them with horrifying variations like Mirelurk Kings and Mirelurk Queens. The latter are towering, armored behemoths capable of devastating attacks, often serving as mini-boss encounters. Their design reflects Fallout's fascination with blending real-world animals with radiation-fueled monstrosities, creating creatures that feel both familiar and alien. The wasteland is also home to mutated wildlife drawn from everyday animals. Rad scorpions, giant irradiated scorpions, burrow underground and strike with venomous stingers. Bloatflies and bloodbugs, grotesque insect mutations, buzz around and harass survivors. Mallarats, oversized and aggressive, turn a simple animal into a constant threat. Even cats and cows didn't escape mutation. Brahmin, two-headed cattle, became the backbone of wasteland farming and trade. These mutated creatures remind players that nuclear war reshaped every corner of the ecosystem, turning even mundane animals into challenges for survival. Some creatures tie directly to local culture. Fallout 76 introduced the Mothman, inspired by West Virginia folklore. Players could encounter him as both an enemy and a mysterious, almost supernatural figure. Other regional creatures like the Grafton Monster, the Snallygaster, and the Flatwoods Monster took local legends and gave them a Fallout twist, blending real-world myth with nuclear horror. These designs not only added variety to Appalachia, but also rooted Fallout 76 in the culture of its setting, making the game's monsters feel uniquely tied to its geography. Experimentation by humans also created horrors beyond natural mutation. Centaurs, introduced in Fallout 1, were failed FEV experiments, grotesque amalgamations of flesh with multiple limbs and distorted faces. Their disturbing designs embodied the dangers of unchecked scientific ambition. Similarly, the Institute in Fallout 4 produced synthetic beings that blurred the line between man and machine. While not mutated in the traditional sense, synths reflected Fallout's ongoing theme: technology can be as frightening and inhuman as radiation. Boss creatures added spectacle to Fallout's world. Swan, the super mutant behemoth in Fallout 4, lurked in Boston Common, disguised as a pile of debris until players drew too close. The terrifying legendary Deathclaws in Fallout New Vegas stalked Quarry Junction, turning the area into one of the most dangerous spots in the Mojave. Fallout 76 introduced the Scorch Beast, a mutated bat that served as one of Appalachia's apex threats, capable of laying waste to entire groups of players. These larger-than-life monsters reminded players that the wasteland was not just about scavenging and survival, but also about confronting living nightmares. What makes Fallout's creatures so effective is that they are never just filler enemies. They embody the consequences of humanity's choices: nuclear war, unethical science, and careless ambition. Every ghoul is a person transformed. Every super mutant is a human experiment gone wrong. Every Brahmin or Radroach is a reminder that no species escaped the Great War unscathed. In Fallout, the monsters are not simply obstacles. They are history made flesh, living evidence of a world forever changed. For players, these creatures bring both fear and fascination. Meeting a Deathclaw for the first time is a rite of passage. Befriending Dogmeat and fighting alongside him against mutants makes survival feel hopeful. Encountering ghouls that remember life before the bombs adds depth to the lore. The Wasteland's creatures ensure that Fallout is never just an empty desert. It is a world teeming with life, twisted though it may be, waiting to challenge, horrify, and sometimes even inspire those who dare to explore it. If the vaults and factions give Fallout its structure, the quests are where its heart beats. From tragic morality plays to absurd comedy, Fallout's quests showcase the series' storytelling brilliance. They are rarely just fetch missions instead. They reveal hidden histories, test the player's morals, and leave choices that resonate long after the credits roll. Fallout's quests remind players that the Wasteland is not simply a backdrop, but a stage for unforgettable stories. In the original Fallout, quests set the tone for the series. The search for Vault 13's water chip was simple in concept, but sprawling in execution, forcing the player to explore settlements, negotiate with factions, and confront the Master's super mutant army. Along the way, smaller quests rescuing Tandy from raiders in Shady Sands, uncovering the fate of Necropolis, or deciding whether to help the Brotherhood of Steel revealed the game's central theme. Survival isn't just about strength, it's about choices. These quests establish the formula where even small decisions could ripple outward with major consequences. Fallout 2 expanded on this with quests that blended satire and depth. New Reno offered one of the most infamous quest lines, letting players work for competing mafia families in a city ruled by crime, drugs, and casinos. Depending on choices, you could wipe out entire crime families or rise through their ranks. In Vault City, players confronted a society built on strict order and exclusion, where helping ghouls or raiders had long-term effects. Fallout 2's quests pushed the boundaries of freedom, allowing solutions through violence, diplomacy, or deception, and cementing Fallout's reputation for open-ended storytelling. Fallout 3 brought this philosophy into a fully 3D world. One of its most memorable quests, The Power of the Atom, asked players whether to disarm or detonate a live nuclear bomb sitting in the middle of Megaton, the game's first major settlement. Disarming it brought gratitude and safety to the townsfolk. Detonating it destroyed the city in a spectacular mushroom cloud, turning it into a radioactive crater and reshaping the entire map. This quest became an emblem of Fallout's moral dilemmas, whether to preserve or obliterate, and what those choices said about the player's character. Fallout, New Vegas elevated branching quests to their peak. The game's faction system meant that almost every major quest line intertwined with others. One standout was Beyond the Beef, set in the Ultralux Casino. Here, the courier uncovered a horrifying secret. Members of the White Glove Society, a faction of wealthy elites, had a history of cannibalism. Players could choose to expose them, help them return to cannibalism, or find compromises that balanced morality and pragmatism. Quests like this highlighted Fallout's ability to combine dark humor with chilling horror, giving players freedom to navigate shocking scenarios. Another New Vegas classic was Come Fly With Me, where the courier encountered a group of ghouls preparing to launch themselves into space. At first, it seemed absurd, but beneath the humor was tragedy. These ghouls believed they had no place left in the wasteland and sought salvation in the stars. Depending on the player's choices, the rocket launch could succeed or fail, leaving an outcome that was as bittersweet as it was unforgettable. Fallout's storytelling thrived in these gray spaces where laughter and sorrow collided. Fallout 4 continued the tradition with quests tied closely to its factions. In the Silver Shroud, players donned the costume of a pre-war radio superhero and delivered justice across the Commonwealth, role-playing as a vigilante, complete with cheesy one-liners. Kid in a Fridge told the strange tale of a boy trapped in a refrigerator since the bombs fell, raising questions about Fallout's cartoonish use of radiation and its impact on lore. Meanwhile, the last voyage of the USS Constitution offered one of the game's most whimsical quests, where a crew of robots tried to launch an 18th century ship armed with rocket engines. These stories balanced seriousness with humor, showing that even in a devastated world, the bizarre and hopeful could thrive. Fallout 76, despite its rocky launch, eventually introduced memorable quests through updates. The Wastelanders expansion added fully voiced NPCs, bringing back the branching dialogue that fans had missed. Quests like Overseer's Mission gave players insight into Vault 76's leadership, while faction quests with the Raiders and Settlers mirrored the moral dilemmas of earlier Fallout titles. Seasonal events like Fastnacht Parade added community-driven stories, blending West Virginian folklore with Fallout's quirky charm. While 76's storytelling may not rival New Vegas in complexity, it showed how the franchise could adapt its quest design to an online world. Across all Fallout games, hidden side stories often resonate just as strongly as main quests. In Fallout 3's Oasis, players met Harold, the mutant ghoul hybrid, with a tree growing from his body, and had to decide whether to end his suffering or let his new forest flourish. In Fallout 4's Nick Valentine quests, the noir-inspired synth detective wrestled with identity and purpose. These smaller tales reminded players that the wasteland wasn't just about saving the world, it was about the lives and struggles of individuals trying to survive within it. What makes Fallout's quests timeless is their ability to combine freedom with consequence. They rarely present clear good or evil paths. Instead, They force players to grapple with compromise, morality, and unintended outcomes. The wasteland reflects human complexity, and its quests mirror the choices we face in uncertain times. Sometimes you save a settlement, sometimes you doom one, sometimes you just help a robot launch a centuries-old warship into the sky for the sheer joy of it. In Fallout, storytelling is never just about reaching the end. It's about the journey, the choices, and the memories made along the way. Few game franchises owe as much to their community as Fallout. From fan-made mods to massive overhaul projects, Fallout players have kept the wasteland alive even in the long years between official releases. The creativity, dedication, and passion of fans have not only extended the life of the series, but have also shaped how people think about what Fallout can be. In many ways, the community is as responsible for Fallout's legacy as the developers themselves. The tradition of modding began with Fallout's PC roots. Even the earliest titles inspired players to tinker with game files, creating tweaks and small fixes. But it was Bethesda's takeover with Fallout 3 that fully unlocked the potential for large-scale modding. Using the same creation engine that powered the Elder Scrolls series, Fallout 3 gave fans the tools to reshape the capital wasteland, from new weapons and armor to full quest lines and graphical upgrades. The modding scene exploded, turning Fallout into a canvas for creativity. Some of the earliest and most popular mods for Fallout 3 focused on fixing bugs and improving quality of life. Unofficial patches corrected hundreds of issues that Bethesda never addressed. Texture packs improved the game's graphics, making the wasteland sharper and more detailed. Players also created mods that added weather systems, survival mechanics, and even entirely new companions. For many, Fallout 3 was as much about installing mods as it was about playing the base game, showing how fans could tailor the experience to their liking. Fallout New Vegas took modding even further. Its strong writing and faction system made it a favorite among fans, and mods extended its life for more than a decade. One of the most famous projects was Project Nevada, a massive overhaul that added everything from sprinting and bullet time to customizable HUDs and cybernetic implants. Another iconic mod, Tale of Two Wastelands, merged Fallout 3 and New Vegas into a single, seamless experience, allowing players to travel between the capital wasteland and Mojave Desert in one playthrough. Mods like these didn't just tweak the game, they reinvented it. Quest mods also became a defining feature of the community. New Vegas bounties offered a gritty series of bounty hunting missions with fully voiced characters, while Autumn Leaves presented a philosophical story about a vault filled with robots. These fan-made quests often rivaled or even surpassed official content, proving the talent within the community. Some modders even went on to professional game development careers after showcasing their skills in Fallout projects. Fallout 4, with its settlement system and crafting focus, became another playground for mods. Fans built elaborate player homes, functional city expansions, and new settlement mechanics that far surpassed the vanilla tools. Sim settlements, for example, transformed settlement building into a dynamic system where NPCs constructed and upgraded their own homes and shops, turning towns into living communities. Other mods added entirely new factions, voiced companions, and sprawling quest lines, blurring the line between official expansions and fan content. Graphics mods also flourished in Fallout 4. High-resolution texture packs, lighting overhauls, and weather systems gave the Commonwealth a new look. Some projects aimed for photorealism, while others leaned into Fallout's stylized retrofuturism. The sheer variety meant that no two players' games looked exactly the same, reinforcing Fallout's role as both a game and a customizable platform. Beyond mods, the Fallout community has always thrived in fan projects and preservation efforts. One of the most ambitious is Fallout: The Frontier, a total conversion mod for Fallout New Vegas that added an entirely new map set in Portland, Oregon, complete with vehicles, weather effects, and a brand new storyline. Though controversial, it showed the scale of what fans could achieve. Other projects, like Fallout New California and Fallout Miami, aim to create entire fan-made expansions set in new regions of America, keeping the dream of new Fallout adventures alive, even when Bethesda remained silent. Modding also became a way to preserve and improve the classic Fallout games. Projects like Fallout Fixed for the original game and the Restoration Project for Fallout 2 restored cut content, fixed bugs, and enhanced visuals, ensuring that new players could experience the classics in a polished form. These efforts reflected the community's dedication not just to expanding Fallout, but to preserving its history. Fallout 76, despite being an online game with limited modding potential, still fostered a passionate community. Players created roleplay groups, in-game events, and elaborate camp builds that pushed the limits of the system. Outside the game, fans shared art, cosplay, and machinima videos, continuing Fallout's tradition of player-driven storytelling. Even when official tools weren't available, the community found ways to express its creativity. The importance of modding in Fallout cannot be overstated. Bethesda's games, for all their flaws, are built on an open-ended engine that invites tinkering. The company has often acknowledged that mods are a cornerstone of their success, keeping games relevant for years after release. In Fallout's case, mods have done more than keep the series alive. They have expanded its boundaries, allowing players to imagine new futures for the wasteland. Ultimately, Fallout's community embodies the very spirit of the series: resilience, ingenuity, and creativity in the face of challenges. Just as survivors in the wasteland rebuild society from the ruins, fans rebuild and expand Fallout from the code left by its developers. They fix what's broken, enhance what's lacking, and dream up new adventures when official ones are scarce. The wasteland may be fictional, but the passion of the Fallout community is very real, and it ensures that Fallout will endure as long as players are willing to keep building it. Few franchises in gaming have a legacy as unique and enduring as Fallout. From its beginnings in 1997 as a niche, isometric role-playing game to its evolution into a massive open-world series under Bethesda, Fallout has always been more than just entertainment. It is a reflection of humanity's fears, hopes, and contradictions. With its mix of bleak nuclear devastation, satirical humor, and deep role-playing, Fallout has carved out a place not only in gaming history, but also in broader culture. At its core, Fallout has always been about choices. Whether you are deciding the fate of a vault, siding with a faction, or simply choosing which weapon to carry into battle, Fallout gives players a sense of agency. It doesn't present a perfect world to explore. Instead, it challenges you with a broken one and asks how you will survive. This combination of freedom and consequence is what makes the series timeless. Even decades after their release, the older games remain replayable because no two playthroughs ever feel the same. Culturally, Fallout stands as one of gaming's most recognizable brands. The smiling face of Vault Boy, The green glow of a Pip-Boy screen and the ominous phrase, war, war never changes, are instantly identifiable, even outside the gaming community. References to Fallout appear in television shows, internet memes, and even real-world merchandise like Nuka-Cola bottles. For many, Fallout has transcended being just a game. It has become a shared language of post-apocalyptic imagination. The franchise has also influenced countless other games. Its open-ended design inspired modern RPGs to give players more freedom. Its blend of retrofuturism and satire showed how world-building can be both entertaining and critical of real-world culture. And its emphasis on moral ambiguity challenged developers to move beyond simple good versus evil choices, proving that gray morality can make storytelling richer and more relatable. Fallout's DNA can be seen in series ranging from Wasteland, its spiritual predecessor revived decades later, to survival games that echo its mix of scarcity, danger, and discovery. Fallout's legacy also lies in its adaptability. The series has evolved through different developers, genres, and formats without losing its identity. Black Isle's Fallout 1 and 2 gave players deep role-playing systems. Bethesda's Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 brought the Wasteland into immersive first-person worlds. Obsidian's Fallout, New Vegas, proved that nuanced writing and branching factions could thrive in the modern era. Even Fallout 76, despite its rocky start, has carved out a place as a community-driven experiment. Each entry reflects its time while keeping the spirit of Fallout intact. The series has had its controversies, from buggy launches to debates over changes in tone and mechanics. Yet these moments haven't diminished its reputation. If anything, they show how passionately fans care about Fallout. Every new release sparks discussions, arguments, and excitement, proving that Fallout is more than just a product. It is a living, evolving story that players feel invested in. The disagreements reflect the series' richness. There is no single right way to experience Fallout, and that flexibility is part of its magic. Fallout's legacy has also been cemented beyond games. Novels, comics, and tabletop RPGs have expanded its universe, while merchandise keeps its symbols alive in everyday life. In 2024, Amazon Prime Video launched a Fallout television series, bringing the Wasteland to a new audience. With its massive sets, recognizable factions, and blend of humor and tragedy, the show captured the essence of Fallout while telling new stories within its universe. Its success demonstrated just how deeply Fallout resonates, even with those who had never played the games. The longevity of Fallout comes down to its ability to balance despair with hope. The Wasteland is filled with ruins, tragedy, and violence, but it is also filled with resilience, friendship, and the dream of rebuilding. Players encounter devastation, but they also meet communities trying to plant crops, musicians still playing on the radio, and companions willing to risk their lives for a cause. Fallout reminds us that even in the darkest times, humanity endures. That message gives it a timeless quality, relevant to every generation that discovers it. Looking at its future, Fallout shows no signs of fading. Bethesda has confirmed that Fallout 5 is planned after The Elder Scrolls 6, and Fallout 76 continues to receive updates. Modding communities are still thriving, creating entire fan-made expansions and keeping older games alive. The television series has introduced millions to the Wasteland, sparking curiosity and drawing new players to the games. With every new generation, Fallout reinvents itself without losing the core themes that made it special in the first place. Ultimately, Fallout's impact lies in its unique blend of tone and vision. Few franchises can make you laugh at a silly Vault Boy perk one moment, then confront you with a heartbreaking moral dilemma the next. Few can make a rusty revolver feel as meaningful as a suit of power armor, and few can combine satire, horror, and humanity into a single coherent world. Fallout achieves all of this because it isn't just about survival in a wasteland, it's about what survival means for humanity as a whole. For nearly 3 decades, Fallout has invited players to step out of a vault, gaze upon a ruined world, and ask themselves, what kind of future will I build? That question, more than any weapon, faction, or quest, is what makes Fallout timeless. The wasteland may change, but the spirit of Fallout remains, resilient, ironic, and enduring, just like the survivors who